We have got a great program for you, so let's get started. As usual, we'd like to recognize our elected leaders and public officials, as well as candidates. We've got a few here today. If I miss your name, it's Lynn's fault. Other honored guests are also listed on the PowerPoint. Let's see. We will start with our New Mexico State Senators, Daniel Ivy Soto, Tim Keller, Mark Moores, Sander Rue, and Benny Shendo. Let's give them a round of applause. New Mexico State Representatives, Kelly Farhado, Jimmy Hall, Larry Larinaga, Mo Maestas, Paul Pacheco, Bill Ream, and Monica Youngblood. Mayors, Jack Torres of Bernalillo, Jera Cordova of Boleyn, and Modi Hicks of Grants, and Brad Hill of Edgewood. Bernalillo County Assessor Tanya Giddings, Bernalillo County Commissioner Wayne Johnson. Albuquerque City Councilors Don Harris, Trudy Jones, and Clarissa Pena. Come on, Trudy, you can stand. Thank you, thank you. Oh, wait, you were oh, sorry. City of Albuquerque CAO Rob Perry, and newly appointed City of Albuquerque Chief of Staff Gilbert Montano. Rio Rancho City Councilors Lonnie Clayton and Chuck Wilkins. AMAFCA Chairman Danny Hernandez. CNM Governing Board Member Debbie Moore. And now on to the candidates. Candidate Alan Way for U.S. Senate. Candidates Richard Preem and Mark Fries for U.S. 1st Congressional District. Candidates Waylon Chavez for New Mexico House of Representatives District 14 and Sarah Maestas Barnes for District 15. Candidate for Rio Rancho Mayor Greg Hall. Candidate for Bernalillo County Assessor George Torres. We have one more VIP to recognize, our very own Foreign Service official back in town from the Indian Ocean. Welcome, David Campbell. And David offered, if the governor's running late, we might have David give a slideshow from his last 2-year vacation. Thank you. Next stop is Ecuador, right? Okay. So, and then anyone else want to just stand up? If you think you're important, stand up. We'll cheer for you. Come on. Thank you. Thank you. Okay, yeah. It's not like we've got an egocentric group or anything. Our sponsors, speaking of our sponsors today have made this event possible. Let's have them introduce their tables. Monica Myers will introduce the Century Sign Builders table. Monica.
Good morning. It's my pleasure to introduce our table. We have Tom Jenkins with Real Estate Advisors, Jason Lott, Rosemont Realty, Dennis Town, Bradbury Stab, Serena Lyons, Loveless Hospitals, Katrina Blay, Century Sign Builders, Karen Rand with Goodman's Interiors, Rob Perry, City of Albuquerque, Jim Dobie, Hunt Companies, and Jim Jepson, Presbyterian Healthcare. I heard there was a rumor we weren't having chicken. Just kidding. Not true.
You can't believe everything you hear. Monica Youngblood will introduce the Chavez-Greaves Consulting Engineers table.
Good afternoon, everyone. I am here on behalf of Chris Youngblood, who is bringing back economic jobs to Albuquerque. He's in LA today. Today I have at our table, we've got Sarah Maestas Barnes, who is a candidate for House District 15. We've got Senator Mark Moores, Senate District 21. We've got Mike Opedal with Footprint Home Care. We've got Arlene Sanchez with APS, Emily Toole, who's retired, and Lieutenant Diaz with the Air National Guard with us today. Thank you.
Next, we will have Keith Meyer from the NAI Maestas and Ward Commercial Real Estate table.
Okay, not to be redundant, but I'm Keith Meyer with NAI Maestas and Ward Commercial Real Estate. And we have at our table, actually at the governor's table, we have Debbie Harms, who's our qualified broker. We have Director John Henderson with NAI Maestas and Ward. We have Mike Stordahl, who's Director of Commercial Mortgages for Q10 Realty Mortgage. And we have Alan Way, Republican candidate for U.S. Senate. We have Jim Hakeem, Director. We have Brett Leslie, who is the land manager for D.R. Horton Company. We have Tito Madrid, who is Alan Way's field manager. Stephanie Chang, who is our Director of Marketing Operations. And Alfred Bolden, who's the President of Schwartzman Incorporated. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everybody. I'm John Bonney. On behalf of Reed & Associates, thank you guys for allowing us to sponsor this event. We're pleased to have at our table Joe Sierra, President of Century Bank Residential Market, Kendall Harris, Vice President of Operations of Sandia Laboratory Federal Credit Union. We have Shelley Zivkovich, Project Manager of Reed & Associates, Kirsten Galvin, Director of Operations of Reed & Associates and Titan. We have Robert Chavez, which as of March 1st is congratulating him as the CEO of Sandia Laboratory Federal Credit Union. Selby Lucero, Facility Manager of Sandia Laboratory Federal Credit Union. We have Mike Lucero, Chief Estimator. Robert DeGurda, Reed & Associates of Texas, Senior Project Manager in our Texas Division. And Richard Nordic of Reed & Associates in Texas as well. And at the governor's table, we have our CEO, Kevin Reed.
Drew Dolan will introduce the Titan Development table.
Thank you so much. Titan's extremely proud to be a sponsor today. Sitting at the Titan table is Ben Spencer, David Drone, heading up our senior division. Head of marketing is Elena Tapia. Will Carter is our project manager. Matt Lammers is our asset and property manager. Chris Pacheco, our esteemed attorney. We don't go anywhere without our attorney these days. Mike Pattengale, financial analyst. And sitting with the governor is Kevin Reed and Kurt Browning. Thanks, Jim.
Thank you. And with Wells Fargo, Ryan Parker will introduce his table.
Thank you. It's wonderful to be here again. We're grateful to be a sponsor. Sitting here at our table today, I'll go around counterclockwise. We have Catherine Torres, a senior banker here in Albuquerque, New Mexico. Shirley Anderson, current group president with Cleaner Construction. Justine Deshays, a senior banker here in Albuquerque. Ryan Garcia, also a senior banker here in Albuquerque. Mr. Adam Harrington with HB Construction. Dolores Overton, a senior banker in our Santa Fe market, and both Mark Bertram and Alicia Bertram here with us from Hotel Park Central, and Ted Humphreys, a senior banker here in Albuquerque, New Mexico. Thank you.
Great. Thank you very much to our sponsors. Obviously, without them, none of this is possible. Have another VIP who just showed up. I'd like to introduce John Barella, the Economic Development Cabinet Secretary. John. And there's a rumor that Tom Clifford and Keith Gardner are supposed to show up. I think it's just a rumor at this point, though. Let's see. So we're going to keep chapter business short today, leave lots of time to hear from our speaker. If you would like to become a member, there should be membership cards on your desk or on the tables. Please fill those out, get it to us if you want to belong to this great organization. And today we have a very special guest to introduce. We're honored to have this year's National Chair of NAIOP, Jean Kane. Jean is the third woman to hold this office and is CEO of Welsh Colliers International in Minnetonka, Minnesota, which is better than Lynn's introduction. Jean is going to give us a quick overview of what is happening at NAIOP Corporate and what they are seeing across the nation. Please welcome Jean Kane. Cool that we're making you walk up here.
Thanks, everybody, and I want to thank your chapter for inviting me out to speak at this event. It's like when they asked me to speak to the event where Governor Martinez was going to be at, I didn't know what this would mean, but reading about Governor Martinez and seeing this turnout, it's really phenomenal. It's quite an honor to be here today. I also want to congratulate your chapter for receiving the Chapter of the Year award last month. That's also quite an honor. It's a coveted award, and you guys did a great job. As an organization, we're really strong. We finished up 2013 ahead of plan, and that's really, I believe, due to the fact that we try to stay relevant, we try to have great education, we try to have great events like this at a chapter level and nationally. And it's also, I want to, it's in part because of the uptake in the industry, the real estate industry rebounding. And we also had an increase in membership. We grew our membership by about 4%, and we're now about 15,000 strong, so that's really great. When I look at 2014, we're really focused on 3 initiatives. First, it's advocacy. It's always been at the core, and I know it's really strong here just by this event today. But on a chapter level, we have a very strong grassroots efforts, and this chapter is no exception. But nationally, we really have a terrific team at Capitol Hill, and they represent us well, every single day. And this year with midterm elections, it's really important to be involved both locally and nationally at the table with big issues. The second major initiative is continuing to build on our communication efforts to members, chapters, and the media. And events like this, an in-person event where I get the opportunity to hear from members personally. Dale Decker hosted a great event in his offices this morning. Thank you, Dale, for doing that. And then I got a tour of the Albuquerque market. But hearing what's going on around the country is important. And then it's also important, I think, for our chapters and our membership to hear what's going on at corporate. So I did that this morning. And then last but not least, we've got a rapidly growing membership population, and I think it's happening here locally too. It's in our developing leaders. And this group is really special. They're very diverse, they're very engaged, and I really want to continue to see them be engaged and continue to help our industry grow and be strong. And then last but not least, but we're really focused on this year, is our next 3-year strategic plan. We've conducted surveys of our membership, we've held personal telephone conversations and had focus groups, and all this data is being put together, and the executive committee and I are getting together at the end of April and putting together a strategic plan, and then we're going to be presenting it to our board in early May. And with that, the plan will guide us through the next 3 years, so we're excited about that. And I think in closing, I'm just going to talk a little bit about the commitment to getting involved and reaching out and meeting our membership. Not every chapter has a great event like you're having today, and sometimes they ask me to be the speaker, so they're hard up. But when I go out and speak around the country, my presentation is about the changing face of commercial real estate and how to stay relevant in a changing demographic population with our corporate leaders. If you really look at the demographics, both on ethnicity and gender, not gender necessarily, but if you look at the demographics across the United States, we are changing rapidly. If you look at who corporate America has at the table, at their seats for the mid-level managers and the senior level leadership, it's getting more diverse. And if you look at our top business schools across the country and the kinds of people they're recruiting and graduating, it's a diverse population. And if you compare those statistics to our industry, to our association, we're falling behind. And I really believe it's important for us, in order to stay relevant, to continue to build diversity in our association. And for those of us who've been in the business for a long time and have gone through a lot of cycles, I believe it's important for us to reach out to those people and help them and be a mentor and tell them that life isn't always easy and help them and coach them and be more inclusive. So in closing, I'm really humbled to have this position, to serve as your national chair, and I'm really looking forward to a great 2014. Thank you.
I got real excited about doing this, and so did a little bit of homework on Susana Martinez, and found an interesting trend that you may not be aware of. When Susana Martinez graduated from elementary school, she was voted most likely to become governor. In her graduating class at Riverside High School in El Paso, she was voted most likely to become governor. At UTEP, she was voted most likely to become governor. And as you might expect, when she graduated from the University of Oklahoma Law School, she was voted most likely to become governor. But never being one to back down from a challenge, she defied the prognosticators, did not take the easy route, and become governor of Texas. She moved to where she was needed. She moved to the great state of New Mexico. Let's give her a hand. Do we have her walking in now? Because timing would be really good if she were, just as far as like the production value and all that, this would be a great time to enter. Just, ladies and gentlemen, I give you the first female governor of the great state of New Mexico, the first Hispanic female governor in the country, the Honorable Governor Susana Martinez.
Good afternoon, and thank you so very much. Just got back from Go Lobos and Go Aggies. It was great fun to be in Las Vegas and hopping from game to game, back and forth, and watching them win. And I think we may be the only state that has two of our four-year institutions, our research institutions, going to the NCAA, of which I will also be attending if they don't lose my luggage again. It's very difficult in the morning when you go, I have no makeup. It's all in my luggage. But it was all wonderful, and I'll tell you, the arena, I think they call it the Pit of the West, just packed with Lobo fans. They have a great following. And also over at the Orleans, the Aggies had the most New Mexicans there than they ever have before. And so that is what New Mexico is about, is making sure that we're following our students and our athletes and making sure we're cheering them on and we follow them wherever they go. And so hopefully you all can make it to, I think it's St. Louis, Missouri, and someplace in Seattle, because they need us. They need us. They like to hear us cheering, and it's just amazing. There's nothing like it except the real pit. That is amazing. And of course, it's always great to be here at NAIOP, and I want to be able to give you a little bit of an update of what happened just recently at our legislative session. But let me start by saying this, that no legislative session is ever easy. They are always contentious. There's too much politics and posturing, and this session was no different. In some ways, it was even much worse. For those of you who were there, you all know what I mean. Of the 4 regular sessions during my time as governor, this past session was, unfortunately, the most hyper-partisan that I've ever seen. The confirmation process was absurd in order to create a political circus. Every constitutional amendment under the sun was proposed for political gain in order to put something on the ballot or to avoid having to work together through the normal legislative process. At one point, the budget was completely stalled by the most extreme factions of one party. There was a clear message: no compromise, no working together, no willingness to find common ground. I note these things today because they were real. That's exactly what was happening day after day. But my intention isn't to dwell on them, because thankfully for the 4th year in a row, gridlock and partisan did not ultimately rule the day in Santa Fe. For the 4th year in a row, we passed a reasonable, balanced budget that prioritizes education reform, invests in job creators, and provides for a strong safety net for the most vulnerable. And for the 4th year in a row, because of our ability to work together, we haven't had to call a special session. That's why I'm able to stand here today and say that overall, this legislative session was a success. Not for one party or another, but for the state of New Mexico. In my State of the State address on January 1st, I asked the legislature to pass measures to help create a more robust economy in New Mexico that helps us become less reliant on the federal government, because we are extremely reliant on the federal dollar. We all know our state is heavily dependent on federal spending, and that dependency makes our economy especially vulnerable to federal budget cuts and, of course, to the dysfunction in Washington. We need to have an economy as diverse as our beautiful state that we have come to call home, and we need to build on all that we've done to help us be more competitive for diverse jobs. This year we passed legislation to create an online portal that will act as a one-stop shop for businesses. We invested heavily in important job creation efforts, like the Local Economic Development Act, or LEDA, allocating $15 million toward the state's closing fund, and that's a 5-fold increase in 1 year. We began the process of making job training incentive program permanent, because it hasn't been in the past. When there was a little bit of extra money, we throw it at it, but it was never permanent. Now it is permanent. And we passed legislation to attract aviation companies that will create high-paying jobs for New Mexicans. Think about the extraordinary story that New Mexico has to tell. 3 years ago, we closed the largest structural deficit in the history of New Mexico. Together, we did that, and have had a surplus every year since. We competed with Texas on locomotive fuel taxes and attracted Union Pacific to our state, jump-starting a border boom that has led to record exports and tremendous growth. I go down to Santa Teresa every single time there is a red ribbon job creating event. I was there just a couple of weeks ago where 5 companies, 5 at once, have come to the southern part of the state. 2 years ago, we attacked the tax pyramiding ending double and triple taxation on local construction and contractors and on manufacturing. Last legislative session, we sent the strongest message yet that New Mexico is open for business and working to diversify our economy and grow the private sector. And the way we did that is we cut the business tax by 22%. We also reformed the unemployment insurance system, completely reformed it, finally taking the politics out of the process. And this year, as I said, we built on our efforts to compete, improving our ability to recruit companies and to grow our workforce. It's no wonder that we've gone from third worst in the West in manufacturing to the top spot. We're number one in the West now. It's no wonder that we are exporting to Mexico at record levels. We've taken deliberate steps together, Democrats and Republicans, to put our financial house in order, to make New Mexico the most attractive Western state for manufacturing, and to build our border economy and position the state for strategic growth. No question we have a long way to go. We will never stop working to improve and diversify our state, but we're in the game now. We're competing, and that's something that we can all be very proud of. I also asked the legislature to approve roughly $111 million worth of infrastructure investment in critical water projects throughout the state. Because I know that a clean, safe, and reliable water supply is vital to economic growth. Attracting and retaining business is difficult if water is scarce, if it's unclean, or at risk of being lost at a moment's notice. In the end, the legislature authorized $89 million worth of capital outlay. Now, I wanted 111, and I could have spent all 111 on all water projects throughout our state. But instead, they gave me $89 million worth of capital funding for these water investments to rehabilitate our damaged watersheds after the 1-2 punch of fires and then the floods, to repair broken or leaking dams, adding to local water supplies and shoring up their barriers, to ensure whole communities can once again have clean water, because it is amazing that in New Mexico, not everyone can turn on the tap and have drinking water, and we're in the year of 2014. We have to have every single New Mexican be allowed to turn on that water tap and have water right from the tap. And it's unacceptable that not every citizen in New Mexico can. I have always said that government invests in infrastructure in the right way. It can achieve a very important purpose. We can create substantial construction jobs in the short term and lay a long-term foundation for economic growth. And that's what we did this year, with the vast, vast majority of our capital funds going to water projects, public school building renovations, and highway and road improvements. And we're also now heavily investing in broadband projects to improve the access of schools to the internet. And we're enhancing the communications network that law enforcement officers rely on. There shouldn't be a single school in this state. I know we're a large state and very rural, but every kid deserves to have Wi-Fi, to be able to actually be able to experience the world and all that the possibilities that the world has to offer from their computers, at home and at school. In addition, I'm also pleased that the legislature already agreed to fund nearly all of the healthcare workforce program initiatives that I proposed to better position us to provide high-quality primary care services to New Mexico families. These initiatives will create well-paying jobs and their healthcare jobs in rural and in urban areas alike, and help us meet the challenges posed by unprecedented changes in healthcare. We're bolstering the ranks of all types of primary care providers, making New Mexico the most attractive state in the nation for nurse practitioners. I like saying we're the first now. We're the first in a lot of things now, and we haven't been in a very long time. We're making New Mexico the most attractive in the nation for nurse practitioners and expanding loan forgiveness programs to nurses, doctors, and other caregivers who promise to work in rural areas. Expanding telemedicine to get better care to rural communities. Adding slots to the nurse practitioner program at UNM and creating new family practice physician residencies. And institutionalizing community health workers as critical members of the primary care team. Community health care workers are like promadoras. They go knocking on the doors of people who have no health care, who aren't managing their diabetes or their high blood pressure. And they go and they take their high blood pressure and they make sure that they make their appointments. They make sure that they're taking care of their diets. They're the front line, the boots on the ground, making sure that they're taking care of their health and going to see their physicians so that it doesn't become an issue where they have to arrive at the emergency room where it's more expensive. And before, many of them were just volunteers. Now they can voluntarily be certified and be reimbursed. We are finally leading. We are not going to allow the challenges of healthcare reform to bowl us over. And I'm grateful for the support of legislators in these efforts. Even Texas started to look at New Mexico and say they are ahead of us in some of these projects, because a nurse practitioner has to be supervised by a physician in Texas. In New Mexico, they don't. And they can provide the health care in very small communities. Sometimes they are the only health care in small communities. And with telemedicine, they can then communicate with experts in larger communities where they have physicians and the experts that they can then rely on their advice. Texas is now looking at us and saying, maybe we shouldn't be losing our nurse practitioners to New Mexico, where they can build their small businesses in the smaller communities and be the healthcare provider in those smaller communities. Now I don't have to call Governor Perry. He calls me. But perhaps no issue, of course, as you know, is more important to me than the future of our state and our education reform. You've heard me say it over and over. We cannot improve our economy in the long term unless our kids can read and graduate from high school. That's why I'm particularly pleased that the budget we eventually passed funds nearly every education reform initiative that I had proposed by my executive budget. In fact, the budget we passed spends more on public schools than at any other point in state's history. And by directing more dollars towards reforms and invest directly in the classroom on improving student achievement, we're making education spending more accountable and results-driven. It's not about the money and how much more and more and more we keep throwing at education. It's how we target it to make sure our kindergartners are reading or recognizing shapes and colors and starting to understand letters. And the first graders, that they read at a first grade level before they leave the first grade and go into the second grade. That they can read at the second grade level or better before they go on to the third grade, and so on. They should never go on to the fourth grade if they can't read at the third grade level. Why? Because they are 4 times more likely to drop out. And the argument that I get back is it's hard on their self-esteem to hold them back. It is hard on how they feel about themselves if we hold back a third grader because they can't read. Will you tell me what's harder? That or a 21, 22, 24-year-old who can't read an application and get a job because they dropped out of school, because it became more difficult in the 6th grade, in the 8th grade when they started to not show up, in the 9th grade when they just stopped showing up and they became part of our dropout system. I believe strongly in targeting our dollars and making sure that we account for them and that the data follows those dollars to make sure that the programs and the reforms are working. Because if you just throw it at the system, we will continue to get the very same results. And as parents, grandparents, teachers, we want to support you. And the only way we can do that is if, as a community, we come together and say 49th in education is completely unacceptable. Our children deserve more. We also passed a budget to help parents better engage in their child's education. We'll expand the use of parent portals so they know daily about attendance, grades, and assignments. It's an internet program. Some schools have it right now. They take it out of their own budget. And as I told you in the State of the State, I got involved, my stepson's mother has a master's in education, and so she was really very involved with his studies, and then he got senioritis, and then he came to me, and I went, well, I don't know what I'm supposed to do here. So I got on the parent portal, and I saw all these A's, and I thought, well, I don't understand. He's doing pretty good. He's got all these A's, and it tells you what his homework is. It tells you if you turned in your homework. It tells you, because usually if you go through your kid's backpack, there's just papers shoved at the bottom of the books and kind of crinkled, and he didn't turn it in, and it's like, and I'll pull it out and say, why did you do the homework if you didn't turn it in? Oh, I forgot, and so then you get a 0, and all this information is in a parent portal, so you can know it at home, at night. So when you ask your child, do you have homework today? And they tell you no, you say, come sit here. Let's look at this parent portal. You do have homework. And so when I went to visit the school and I saw all these A's, I asked the teacher, I said, well, why are we having problems? I don't understand. And he said, well, those A's aren't A's because he's doing well. Those are because he's not going to school. Those are absences. So we had a very different conversation when we went home. And I said, I will sit next to you for the next 6 months to make sure that you graduate. I can embarrass you that way, and I will sit in that little chair right next to you, or you are going to show up to class every day, and that parent portal helped me catch up and know what he needed to do every day. And he did it, and he graduated. But those are the things those are tools that need to be in every parent's hands. And they're not right now. And so the state is willing to pay for them so that money that is being spent right now by our school districts can be spent on something else that they need in their school district, so that we can have these parent portals available in every corner of the state, so all parents know how their kids are doing, do they need help, do they need assistance, and how quickly you can learn that, so they don't fall behind 6 months, and then you have 6 whole months to catch up on. And so those parent portals are going to be paid for now by the state of New Mexico. We increase funding for interventions, of course, that are targeted directly at struggling schools, dollars that are DNF schools, the kids that are not doing as well, how do we move them up to close that achievement gap, and for early literacy efforts targeted directly at struggling students. We're going to hire more math and science teachers in areas that have a hard time recruiting them. We raised the minimum starting teacher salary to 6.7. I wanted to give them a 10% increase in their raise. I wanted teachers to be incentivized. I wanted people to be incentivized to become teachers and make that their career. The legislature gave me only 6.7%. But we will now fund pilot programs designed to reward teachers who are the highest performing. And we're continuing to invest in expanding the number of advanced placement courses. You may have heard that our Hispanic students in New Mexico are #1 in the country in success in AP courses. #1. And our low-income students in New Mexico are #2 in the country in AP course success. That is amazing. It just goes to show that it doesn't matter where you grow up or what your background is. Every child can learn, and every child should have equal opportunities for success. You know, I've told this story before, and I apologize if you've heard it before, but it bears repeating. The school, that small school in Anthony, New Mexico, that has a 100% Hispanics attend that school. 100% of the students are eligible free or free or reduced lunch and breakfast. 60% of those students, Spanish is their first language. And they earned an A grade because that principal in that school and the teachers in that school said, we will no longer make excuses that children can't learn because they are poor, because they are Hispanic, because they live in dilapidated housing, because they have alcohol in their home, or because they live in government housing. We have these children for 7 hours a day, and we are going to make the absolute best we can for them. And they earned an A, and they were recently awarded a blue ribbon. They're awarded the blue ribbon as a school out of 286 schools in the country due to their success. That is in Little Anthony, New Mexico. We've also seen our graduation rate rise by 7 percentage points. And that's a big deal because every single diploma earned by a New Mexico student is a ticket to a better life and, of course, to success. And we've seen third grade reading scores begin to grow as well, with greater gains being shown by those taking part in our reading reforms. At first, we provided reading coaches to any school district that wanted them. That reading coach started to teach teachers how to provide a curriculum for kids who are struggling and can't learn to read. From kindergarten to third grade, not just focused on the third grade because we don't want to retain kids. We want them to move along. So we concentrate from kindergarten to third grade. Those school districts that accepted the reading coaches all advanced. All of their students advanced in reading. So the other school districts started to see that they were doing better. And so they started to ask for reading coaches. And we are providing reading coaches to every single school district that wants them because they have seen the data. And the data is proving that our kids can read. I met a 5th grader just the other day And she came up to me and she hugged me, and the first thing she wanted to tell me, she says, I'm in the 5th grade, and I read like an 11th grader. Even the kids get it. She didn't want to tell me anything else but how well she was doing. And those are amazing teachers, amazing principals and leaders that we should be paying more, that we should be rewarding, because that child didn't do it all by herself. She did it first with her family, and then she did it with the teachers that she goes to school with every day, and it was a public school. And so I want to continue to be able to invest in our schools. I can see us moving in the right direction, but there is still a lot of work to do. But this progress, again, doesn't happen all on its own, as I said. And future change won't happen on its own either. It takes all of us together to reform, committing to targeting our education dollars in the classroom and to support our teachers, to help struggling students and to close the achievement gap and to engage our parents. And for those of you that are legislators in this room today, I would like you to stand, please, because I want to thank you for putting our kids first. You know, it's always a struggle to keep fighting the status quo. And by the status quo, I mean fighting those that want to keep doing the same thing and thinking that we're going to get better at it. But you can't be doing the same thing and remain 49th in education and think that things are going to get better. It takes courage, huge courage, to come together as Democrats and Republicans and forget the politics and put our kids first. Then they will stay here at home, nearby, have a good paying job, and not have to leave to get that good paying job, because we will have diversified our economy in a way that the jobs will be right here for us. In conclusion, I hope that I've outlined the signature of what we were able to accomplish this last session. I don't pretend that there weren't disappointments, because there were. This legislature still seems to think it's okay to pass along students from one grade to the next when they aren't able to read. And that truly is not compassionate. And it sets them up for failure. There is no doubt. I was in the criminal justice system for 25 years, and every single kid I dealt with, every single juvenile I dealt with, could not read at grade level. That alone should tell us something. Some of our leaders had gone to Florida, and they said the way they determine how many cells they're going to build in their prisons is by how many students are passed on to the 4th grade without reading at the 3rd grade level. That is a shameful statement. But it is exactly how they build their cells, their prison cells, by those children that can't read. And so I ask that we enact 4 different proposals to help us attract, of course, our researchers and professors in STEM-related fields and better invest in bringing the innovative ideas coming out of our labs and bases to the marketplace. I mean, what better place? New Mexico's blessed with amazing labs. Rather than prioritizing these efforts, the legislature prioritized large, across-the-board pay raises for public employees. So I'm not saying there weren't disappointments. I'm simply saying that despite the early weeks of gridlock, posturing, and partisanship, we chose to find common ground instead. We chose to compromise and work together instead. 4 legislative sessions later, we've restrained spending growth to reasonable levels, gone from deficit to surpluses, invested in education reforms that are showing results, improved our competitiveness, begun to diversify our economy, improved the way we invest in infrastructure so that we can create those jobs, worked to expand our healthcare workforce in order to respond to healthcare reform. We've done it, and we've done it all together. And we have more work left to do, without a doubt. And I want us to continue to working together. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to be here today and to talk to you and give you an update. I appreciate all of you that have gone to the Roundhouse and called and emailed and given your point of view to your legislators, because at the end of the day, we are your servants. We are your servants, and we are to be at the Roundhouse doing that which you have asked us to do. Not special interest groups. You, the citizens of New Mexico, whose children attend our schools and who work here. You, the people who put us in the positions that we are in. And for that, we are grateful. Thank you very much. And I'm not telling you anything about Tesla.
I was going to see if Gary Tonjes had anything he wanted to, anything, no, no, okay.
What did Gary say?
Do we have any questions? Any questions? This is your one shot, come on. Already asked.
I will tell you about Tesla. I mean, other than we're in the game, when before we weren't. 4 states are being considered. We were never being considered at the beginning. But because we have cut taxes and fees 24 different times in the last 4 sessions, because we are now more competitive, we're in the game. We're negotiating, we're talking, we're trying to do the very best to stay in the game. And with the help of some of the things that happened during the session, we are going to keep our fingers crossed, because we have talked to them and we have promised them that the negotiations will remain on the down low, so that we don't jeopardize the opportunities that may come. And I think you had a question, Kevin.
Keith knows me well. He said, be gentle. But the governor knows me even better, and it's not in my nature. So the educate, after being here 23, going on 24 years, and being 49th the entire time, I share your passion and support for everything that you guys are trying to accomplish. I've also know how extremely difficult that is. And I think the people in this room is probably one of the #1 issues for us, because we can't grow our businesses. We see, you know, from the economic development side, we see company after company that's one of the challenges when they look at our state. And I guess the question is, what can we do that we haven't already tried to do to break, in my mind, it's a power gridlock between the people that have controlled the educational system in this state for years that aren't putting our children first. I hear these programs, we're going to do this and we're going to do that, and it's little pieces of nibbles around the edge that aren't going to get us there. How do we break this cycle now? Not 10 years from now, not 15 years from now. I don't have another 23 years to wait. How do we break it now? And how do we have that truthful conversation with the powers that be to change the state once and for all?
There were 2 things that changed Tennessee. Tennessee went up 10 rankings in the country by imposing 2 reforms. And that was by implementing no social promotion and by rewarding our best teachers. and evaluating them. And that evaluation has to include, are your students progressing? So there is an assessment at the beginning when they come into your classroom, and then throughout, I mean, people keep talking about testing and testing and testing. Actually, under this public education department, we are testing less than ever before. We're testing less under the public education department requirements. Now, if you are tested more, your students are being tested more, that's because the school boards are imposing those tests, not the public education department. So you have to ask your school board, why are we having more tests than last year? It is not the public education department. We want to make sure that curriculum and the achievement gap is closed. The only way you do that is you do what Tennessee did, is you make sure we're not passing kids because they're going to fail. And we have to make sure that we're holding teachers accountable and rewarding them, giving them those out-of-cycle salary increases or bonuses or that reward for going after and changing a school like Anthony that was a D school, who's now an A school, and giving that person an incentive to go to another D school who can bring that D school up. We've got to reward, but they don't want to. There is a small group, not a big group, a small group, but a loud voice that says all teachers are 99.9% effective in New Mexico. Then why were we only graduating 63% of our kids? You do the math. It's simple.
Who is the they? Who do we need to go to? This group, this group. Who do we need to go to? Who's this they?
The teachers union.
Okay, let's say that.
They are very powerful, and they take dues.
More powerful than this group.
You're right.
To speak the truth about what the problem is and to change the state forever.
All right, let me give it to you. The teachers union and probably a lot of other unions in this state collect dues. And when they collect dues, actually, the state collects them for the unions. And then we cut a check to the unions, who then use that money against reform. That was in the negotiated union contracts years ago. We are at an impasse, are we not, Dr. Clifford? At this point, I think with SPO, I don't know if he's here, but we're an impasse on the current one because I don't want to take the checks out of the payroll and do their job so they can attack us. Now, change is hard. I get it. That's why we do it with data-driven. I mean, if the data proves we're doing right things in reform, then we should. But you cannot have 99.9% of effective teachers and a 63% graduation rate. But you can with reforms and targeted dollars. And it's very complicated how schools are funded. We just sort of give them a pot of money, and it's called the, help me here, Keith. Yes, the SEG. It's this pot of money, and they put it wherever they want to. And we want targeted dollars on reading, coaches, after-school programs, K through 12. I mean, K3 plus. Kids that need extra days to catch up, 21 days to pay for that. I'm very targeting our dollars. And that was a big fight this year in the budget, a big fight, because the union wants it all in this upper pot so that they can do whatever they want with it, and they do not want merit pay. They do not want to have their performance evaluated based on whether their kids are learning. And it's a progress. Are they progressing? Even our disabled children can learn and can progress. If anyone ever told me my sister couldn't learn or progress, they don't belong anywhere in the school system. And I had a teacher who told me that. But they are being elected, the unions, Teachers' unions are being elected, and they are a loud voice. They are a loud voice, and they go to all the meetings and all the circuses around Hannah Scandera's confirmation. They were all part of that circus. That's why we started making calls to the businesses and the parents who care and wanted to change it. That circus came from that status quo and from that union. And then they're going to bring that money into this state to make sure I'm not here telling you the truth. That's what they're going to do. And I tell them, bring it on.
Thank you, Governor. Fabulous job. That's our show. April 21st is our education and science fair event. Again, education being the key to our success. Please attend. Thank you.